Welcome to Highly Sensitive, Happily Married, the podcast that teaches you to not only have an easier marriage as a sensitive woman, but to have one that feels more amazing by the day. Where you'll hear relatable stories, love advice that works, and coaching on how to have a marriage where feeling upset and disconnected is a thing of the past, and where instead a sense of loving connection and even fun and lightness is the norm. I'm Hannah Brooks, highly sensitive person, love expert, and marriage coach, and I'm so happy to be on this journey with you. Hello, my friends, and welcome. Today we are going to dive into one of the major reasons so many highly sensitive women can't relax in their marriage fully. And it truly is a common pattern. Often one that people don't see in themselves at first. And so this can be really eye-opening and can really help create some really powerful change for you in your relationship and how you feel in it. So I'm excited for this episode. But before we get to it, I want to share two things. One is just a quick request, which is that if you've been enjoying this podcast at all, I would love it. It would mean so much to me if you could head over to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to this podcast and leave a really good review for me. There are so many reasons this helps me and the world that I'm not going to go into now, but just if you have it in you to take a few minutes and do that, that would mean so much to me. So thanks so much in advance for that. And to those of you who've already done so, thank you. You're the best. And secondly, I want to share something that's really exciting to me, which is that over the past year or so, I've been doing a lot of thinking and refining how I help women like you create the kind of marriage you want. And one thing has become really, really clear to me, which is that everything I've been teaching over the years really does fit together into one clear pathway, a pathway that begins by helping you become emotionally secure within yourself, and then leads into creating a relationship that really does feel like coming home to your best friend, where love feels really safe, and closeness comes totally naturally, and you genuinely enjoy just doing life together. And you both, of course, feel deeply loved and supported and really free to be fully yourselves. So that's the kind of relationship I am now calling a safe heart partnership. And because I wanted my programs to reflect that journey more clearly, I've been making a couple big changes over the last several months, which you might have noticed. So now my private coaching program is ready. It's revised, it's redone to make it even better. It's now called Marriage Sanctuary 1-to-1. Which I often just call Sanctuary. So that program, Sanctuary, is where we walk that full safe heart pathway together, 1-to-1, beginning with Foundations of Emotional Well-Being for HSPs. That's the program I've been talking a lot about lately. And then moving into the deeper relational work that helps you create a truly safe heart partnership. So that is now available, and I invite you into it. Of course, if this isn't the season for private coaching for you, you can absolutely begin with Foundations of Emotional Well-Being on its own and then continue into Sanctuary later when you're ready. So you can find out more about all of this over at hspmarriagecoaching.com. I'm truly thrilled to be able to bring this to you, and you'll hear me sharing more about it here and there also. All right, so let's get into it. So last episode, we talked about one of the hidden ways good women like you and me can unintentionally push love away. Specifically, control and many of the very subtle ways it shows up. So if you didn't listen to that episode because you don't think there's any ounce of you that is controlling at all, I do recommend listening to it nonetheless, because it can be incredibly subtle. And in fact, today's episode kind of follows on that to some degree, because in that episode, we did talk about how we fall into control. Again, not because we're bad people or we don't love our partner, but because we're trying to feel loved and safe and connected and okay. And we haven't yet learned a way that works super well and better for all involved in our relationships, ourselves included. So if you did listen to that episode, you might have felt, ooh, I do some of that. Or maybe you recognized some subtle ways that you've been trying to manage your husband's behavior in order to feel better yourself. And after I finished recording that episode, I realized that there is one form of control, really a pretty hidden pattern that I didn't really unpack. And I feel like it really does deserve its own conversation. And really, most women don't even recognize this pattern as control. In fact, if they even notice that it's happening at all, they think it's responsibility or wisdom or simply being emotionally aware. But it's actually one of the most exhausting jobs many women unknowingly take on in marriage. And it's really one of the biggest reasons that you may never fully relax in your relationship. And I call it monitoring the relationship. And this is what I mean by that. Imagine that you're sitting on the couch with your husband or partner after dinner, and nothing really bad has happened or anything. No one's like upset. There's no real obvious conflict or tension, but a part of your mind is kind of in the background evaluating and asking questions like, are we okay? He seems a little quieter than usual. Did I do something? Why hasn't he said much tonight? Is he stressed? Is he pulling away? Should I ask him what's wrong? Maybe I should try to connect more. Maybe I should tell him how I'm feeling. Maybe something's off. And before you know it, you've gone from simply being with your husband on the couch and enjoying the moment you have together to mentally managing the relationship, to checking on it, evaluating it, trying to determine whether it's okay or not. So if this feels familiar, I want you to know something right off the bat here. This is so human, and especially highly sensitive human, and nothing is wrong with you. If it's familiar, you're likely doing what so many highly women just naturally do when their nervous system doesn't feel completely safe. And so today, I want to help you recognize this pattern, because once you see it, you can really begin laying down one of the heaviest jobs you've probably never realized you've been carrying. The exhausting job you didn't even know you took on. So let me ask you a few questions. And as you listen, don't overthink your answers. Just notice whether a part of you says, ooh, yeah, that's me, or recognizes yourself in this. So maybe you've never thought of yourself as anxious or as controlling. Maybe you've just thought, I'm intuitive, or I'm emotionally aware, or I notice things. And that, of course, may be totally true. It probably is true because you're highly sensitive. But notice if your awareness has quietly become monitoring. For example, how quickly do you notice your husband's mood when he walks through the door? Do you immediately notice the tone of his hi or hello, or whether he smiles, or whether he kisses you, or whether he seems distracted, whether he seems excited to see you or indifferent, whether he sits next to you or across the room? Or think about the day and texting him and how quickly he texts back. Are you tracking that? Or are you tracking how many emojis he uses, whether he sounds excited in that text or not? Or maybe you notice whether he asks enough questions about your day and whether he reaches for your hand, whether he initiates affection, whether he says, I love you first, whether he seems fully present or just a little off. So do you notice any of these things? And maybe none of those things by themselves are a problem, to be clear. But the question is, what are you doing with what you notice? Are you keeping track? Are you keeping score? Are you making these things he does mean something is missing, or he's unhappy, or things might not be okay? Because for many women, noticing in these ways I've just described turns into evaluating what it means. Or for shorthand, we can just call that monitoring. So without realizing it, part of your mind starts asking questions all day long, right? Like, are we okay? Did something shift? Is he upset? Is he stressed? Is he pulling away? Did I do something? Is this about me? Even what should I do about what I think this means? Should I bring it up? Should I leave him alone? Should I try to connect more? Maybe I need to explain myself better. Maybe I need to be more patient or more affectionate, or maybe I need to fix this before it becomes something bigger. So do you see how having this kind of monitoring filter on is really exhausting? It's like trying to infuse every action with meaning, with an answer to your uncertainty about whether things are working or not, whether things are okay or not, really like trying to evaluate whether it's still working or whether it needs fixing for things to be okay. Right? That's pretty exhausting. Now, what's so interesting is most of this is happening completely in the background. You can be making dinner or watching a movie or folding laundry or driving to work. And all the while, one part of your brain is still quietly scanning, checking, evaluating, and asking, are we okay? And sometimes you aren't just monitoring him. Sometimes you're actually monitoring the relationship itself. You're tracking how connected you feel, whether enough affection has happened lately, whether you've had enough meaningful conversations, whether he's putting in enough effort, whether you're putting in enough effort, whether things feel close enough, whether the relationship is moving in the right direction, or whether something needs your attention or help. Now, of course, because you're highly sensitive, you are naturally, innately, incredibly good at noticing subtle shifts. So changes in tone, facial expression, energy, connection, all of this can bring up this monitoring pattern. Yeah? And it's almost like you end up becoming the relationship manager. Always watching, always checking, always making sure. So if you're sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, I do this, then please know that I used to do this a lot too, and I can be really compassionate to my past self and even acknowledge I was simply doing what I knew back then to best take care of myself. Even though looking back, I can see it felt like a weighty job that I didn't ever mean to take on intentionally, or I didn't even realize I had taken on intentionally, but I can see it now, right? And I recognize that it was a really tiring job and it was not very effective, but it was well-meaning. And I hope that you will approach yourself in that way too, if you find that you have been doing this as well. Now, I want to talk about why so many of us do this, but first I do want to make something really clear. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't pay attention to your relationship, right? I mean, of course you should. Healthy relationships do require awareness. And in fact, I teach awareness as a foundational, fundamental first piece of improving our relationships, right? Because yeah, of course, healthy relationships require noticing each other, responding to each other, being emotionally present. So all of that is actually very beautiful, and it is absolutely part of love. So obviously, I'm not encouraging you to become indifferent or checked out or to ignore problems. Not at all. What I'm talking about is something different than that, because paying attention and monitoring are not the same thing. Paying attention says, oh, he seems a little stressed today. And then maybe you ask how he's doing. Maybe you offer some support, or you simply give him a little extra grace or space, and you keep living your life. Monitoring, on the other hand, is more like, he seems stressed. What does that mean? Is it me? Is he upset with me? Has something changed? Do we need to talk? Should I fix this? What if we're becoming disconnected? So, do you hear the difference? And okay, that might have been a little bit more dramatic than what actually happens inside you, but I'm exaggerating to show the pattern. But the first one just is noticing, and the second one is starting to manage, right? So the first one observes, and the second one starts searching for danger. The first one stays present, and the other leaves the present moment to evaluate what's happening. So that's the big difference. And I think this is especially important for those of us who are highly sensitive, because many of us have spent our whole lives hearing things like, you're so perceptive, you notice everything, or you're really intuitive. And those really are beautiful gifts, and we often really do have them. Sensitivity allows us to notice subtle changes that many people miss. But sensitivity and hypervigilance are not the same thing. And hypervigilance is where monitoring comes from. So sensitivity helps you experience what's happening deeply. It helps you attune to it and respond in healthy ways. Whereas hypervigilance feels responsible for making sure nothing bad happens. Sensitivity lets you enjoy the moment deeply, and hypervigilance keeps checking for whether the moment is safe enough to enjoy. Sensitivity allows you to participate deeply in your relationship, where hypervigilance turns you into its supervisor. So those are some big differences there, yeah? And this brings us to the next question, which is, if monitoring and hypervigilance are so exhausting, and if we aren't consciously choosing it, why do so many of us do it in the first place? So monitoring is rarely about consciously trying to control our partner or the relationship. Although sometimes monitoring does spill over into what I call policing or trying to control our partner. And I spoke about this and why it happens and how to shift this pattern in the last episode. But whether that happens or the monitoring just stays inside of you, most women, instead of trying to control, are actually just trying to protect something. Right? We're not trying to control, we're trying to protect. We're trying to protect connection or love or protect ourselves from being blindsided by pain. In other words, this monitoring pattern is about trying to create or protect safety and goodness in yourself and in the relationship, which is exactly why this pattern is so totally understandable. In fact, the intention of it is genuinely beautiful. And when your nervous system has experienced enough emotional hurt and disappointment, or rejection, or criticism, or conflict, or disconnection in your life, it naturally doesn't trust those things won't happen again and will want to protect you from it happening again. And so it starts trying to figure out how it can make sure it doesn't happen again. And one of the ways it does that, one of the ways it tries to make sure it won't happen again, is by becoming vigilant. By falling into hypervigilance, like if I pay close enough attention, or if I notice things early enough, or if I catch a problem before it gets bigger, then maybe I won't be blindsided. So monitoring is your nervous system's attempt to protect your heart. And that is so human and so totally understandable. And on top of that, because you're also highly sensitive, again, you're especially good at noticing subtle emotional shifts. So again, that sensitivity really is a gift. But when your nervous system doesn't feel deeply safe, that gift gets recruited into protection mode. So your sensitivity becomes hypervigilance. Instead of helping you experience connection, it starts scanning for disconnection. Instead of helping you truly enjoy love, it starts checking for if it's even still there. So I think about parents with a newborn baby. What do? They monitor, right? They're supposed to. It's genuinely important for the health and safety of the baby. So they check constantly. Is the baby breathing? Is she hungry? Is he too warm? Is he too cold? Do I hear her? Should I go check again? Right? I mean, those of us who have had a child all know this, yeah? And that vigilance makes perfect sense because a newborn genuinely needs that level of attention. But somewhere along the line, many of us unconsciously start treating our relationships the same way, as though they require constant supervision and making sure that everything is still okay. But healthy marriages are not meant to function that way because love isn't sustained by checking it every 5 minutes. Connection isn't created by constantly evaluating whether connection is still happening. But that's exactly what so many of us end up doing because our nervous system has quietly assigned us that job. After somewhere along the line, it lost its ability to feel safe and secure in relationship. Or in other words, it gets sent into dysregulation so easily in relationship. Because that's another clear way of saying all of this. Monitoring is a symptom of nervous system dysregulation and thought patterns that say you are only okay if things are easy and good in your relationship. The problem is that trying to achieve safety via monitoring is an exhausting job that also makes you miss out on simply enjoying the good that is there in your relationship. Because while you're monitoring your relationship, you're not fully living inside of it. You're standing just outside of it, evaluating it instead of living it. Think about how much mental energy that takes. Like you're watching a movie together, but part of your mind is wondering, does he seem distant tonight? Instead of just enjoying his hand in yours in the movie you're watching. Or you're out for a walk together and part of you is wondering, why is he so quiet? Instead of enjoying being with him and your neighborhood. Or you're eating dinner together, but you're paying more attention to his tone than to the yummy taste of your food. Or you're lying in bed together, but instead of simply enjoying being close to him, part of your mind's evaluating whether he seems as connected as he did yesterday. So do you see what monitoring steals from you? Presence and the simple joys of life together. And also a ton of energy. It really does steal your ability to simply be where you are and to laugh and to relax, to enjoy the ordinary moments that actually make up a marriage. And, of course, it makes love feel like work, fraught work, tense work, heavy, burdensome work, instead of the light, nourishing place that it could be, that you want it to be. And this is because your mind is carrying a full-time job that never seems to end. You're never quite able to settle or soften or relax or fully exhale because part of you is always on duty. So no wonder so many women tell me they're exhausted. No wonder their marriages feel heavy. It's hard to experience love as a place of rest and enjoyment and nourishment when part of your brain is always treating it like a project to manage. And then sometimes, like I mentioned earlier, monitoring can kind of cross over into what I call policing the relationship. So you might notice that your partner, say, isn't using the tone that you like, and then you correct him. Or you do various other things to try to get him to be more like you think he ought to be in the relationship, much of which we talked about in the last episode. And that kind of layers on this whole extra layer of work for you, and that can just really burn you out and build a ton of resentment and make you feel like you're carrying this very heavy burden. So again, whether the monitoring just stays inside of you in your mind and nervous system, or it spills out into your behavior, either way, the irony is the more that you monitor, the harder it actually becomes to experience the connection you're looking for. It's like instead of dancing or being out on that dance floor, you're standing on the sideline judging the dance or thinking about what the dancers should do to fix it or make it better, or even trying to get the dancers to dance differently from the sideline, like, hey, stop stepping that way and step that way instead, right? Now, I know you didn't get into your marriage thinking, ooh, my goal is to sit on the sideline and judge and evaluate how good or bad things are constantly. Right? Your goal was always to soak up and truly enjoy the connection and love available in your union. And to do so, you're going to want to shift out of this pattern of monitoring. And so at this point, you're probably wondering, how do I do that? How do I stop this pattern of monitoring? And the beautiful news is that it isn't a personality trait that you're always going to have. Right? It's not like high sensitivity that is a personality trait that you can't shift out of. Monitoring is a protective pattern, which means it can change. So we'll talk about this in a moment, but I want to be very clear with you here that like so much in relationships, you don't stop this pattern by just deciding to stop. You don't stop it by reminding yourself to relax or trying to be less sensitive or less aware or less reactive, because this pattern is not a willpower problem. It is a nervous system pattern and a thought belief set pattern, even a worthiness problem sometimes, an inner security and safety pattern, which means it has to change at those levels. So let me say it simply. If your nervous system still doesn't feel safe, it will keep scanning. If your mind is still organized around threat detection, it will keep evaluating. And if your sense of self-worth is still something you're trying to confirm through your relationship, you will keep checking to see if it's there. So the goal isn't to become someone who stops noticing her relationship. The goal is to become someone who doesn't need to constantly monitor it in order to feel safe in it, so that you can really notice all that is good and soak it all up. So much more, so your relationship can actually nourish you instead of deplete you. And that is a shift that is actually totally possible when you build internal safety by supporting your nervous system into regulation and being able to do that and keep it in that regulated space most of the time. And you rewire your thought patterns to no longer be driven by fear and scarcity and threat. And you develop a deeper, more anchored and stable sense of self-worth. Then you stop needing to track everything or to interpret every tone shift. You stop needing to figure out what every small change means. And instead of constantly tracking if things are okay, you begin to actually experience the relationship that you are in and that it is actually okay or even good. You can sit on the couch and just be there totally okay and present in the moment with your honey. You can have a quiet evening without analyzing it or spinning out, or even totally enjoy that quiet and find peace in it. You can let your husband be in his own emotional state, whatever it is, without it becoming something you have to manage or fix or decode. You can come back into your own life while you're in your relationship. And that is what emotional safety actually feels like. The ability to stay settled and connected without constantly checking whether connection is or isn't happening. And this is exactly why I work the way that I do, because most relationship advice actually starts in the middle. It tries to teach you how to communicate better, or respond differently, or interpret your partner more effectively. But if your internal system is still in threat mode, in monitoring mode, none of that sticks. Because you're still living from vigilance. You're still trying to manage safety through awareness. And that's why I focus so much on what's happening underneath the relationship first. It's not that those things that don't matter that other people teach. It's just that they can't truly change unless you change the deeper layers underneath them first. The patterns in your nervous system, in your thoughts, and in your sense of worth. When those begin to shift, the need to monitor starts to dissolve because you no longer need the relationship to constantly reassure you that you're okay. You are already okay and you feel it bone deep. And as that safety grows in you, you no longer need the relationship to constantly show you signs that it's okay because you've learned that you're safe no matter what. And the huge and kind of magical truth that starts happening from there, as you trust that it is okay and you live from there more and more, your relationship actually grows more and more okay, more good, more loving and light, more full of genuine safety and security and love and joy built into the fabric of your day-to-day lives together. And the work you put in from there to deepen all of that, like learning better communication or repair after difficult moments, etc., that work doesn't feel heavy. And it is way more effective than it used to be from that old place of vigilance and fear and fragility. So if you have noticed that you might fall into this monitoring pattern sometimes, I don't want you to walk away from this episode thinking the goal is simply to stop monitoring, because that's actually not the goal at all, right? The goal is what becomes possible when you no longer feel like you have to monitor. Imagine what your marriage could feel like if all that mental energy became available for something else. So instead of constantly wondering whether he still loves you, you're actually enjoying loving him. Instead of analyzing every interaction, you're creating new loving memories together. Instead of wondering whether you're connected, you're simply experiencing and enjoying your connection. Instead of trying to get reassurance, you're actually feeling secure enough to receive the love that already really is there. And your husband gets to come home without feeling like he's being evaluated. And you get to stop feeling like the relationship manager. And love just stops feeling like a project. And it starts feeling like a true partnership. You laugh more, you flirt more, you enjoy ordinary Wednesday nights more. You find yourself genuinely appreciating who he is instead of constantly wishing he were a little different. You become curious about him again, and he becomes curious about you again. There's more freedom, more lightness, more affection, more ease and playfulness and mutual support, and more of that feeling that you're on the same team. And then the part my clients often mention feels the most like magic. Your husband often starts moving toward you more, being more open, more affectionate, asking you to spend time with him, planning a date for you. And this isn't because you finally figured out how to get him to do that. It's because people naturally move toward relationships where they feel truly accepted and respected and appreciated and emotionally safe. And when there's no monitoring going on constantly under the surface, safety builds. the environment between you, the emotional environment between you feels so much softer and safer. And on top of all of that, and perhaps my most favorite of all, you finally get your own heart back. Your happiness is no longer hanging on whether today's text sounded warm enough, or whether he noticed your new haircut, or whether tonight's conversation was deep enough. You're living from a steadiness inside yourself that allows you to love freely instead of fearfully, to ask for what you want without trying to control someone into giving it to you, to really take in and receive love, to soak it up instead of measuring whether enough of it is happening all the time, and to just truly enjoy your marriage. And that's what I mean when I talk about creating a sanctuary, a place not just where conflict is handled well, but a relationship that actually really does feel like home, where both of you can exhale, where both of you get to be fully yourselves, where love feels light again, where your hearts become safe places for one another. So if that's the kind of relationship you want, I want you to know that is exactly why I created Sanctuary. Sanctuary is the entry point of the full Safe Heart pathway, a place where we don't just work on communication or conflict, although we do, but we begin by helping you build emotional security within yourself. And then we bring that work directly into your relationship so you can intentionally cultivate a Safe Heart partnership together. And that journey begins with foundations of emotional well-being for HSPs, because lasting relationship transformation starts with the inner work. And when you step into Sanctuary, foundations of emotional well-being is included as the first layer of that transformation. So if this feels like the season to receive that kind of personalized, deep transformational support, I'd love to walk that pathway with you. You can learn more about Sanctuary at the link in the show notes or at www.hspmarriagecoaching.com. And if one-on-one support isn't the right fit for you right now, that's perfectly okay too. Many women begin by taking that very first step into foundations of emotional well-being for HSPs on its own, really building that emotional steadiness that becomes the foundation for the deeper relational work later when the time is right. So you can learn more about foundations of emotional well-being in the show notes, or again at my website, www.hspmarriagecoaching.com. Either way, whether you step right into Sanctuary and the full Safe Heart pathway, or you just start with foundations of emotional well-being, I'd be honored to help you build a relationship where both of you become a safe, loving place for one another. Now, before I let you go, I want to leave you with one gentle invitation for this week. Don't try to just stop monitoring your relationship. I actually think that's too big of a goal right now. Instead, simply begin noticing it. Notice the moments your mind starts checking. Are we okay? Did something shift? Do I need to fix something? And when you notice it, don't criticize yourself. Just quietly and compassionately remind yourself, oh, there's my nervous system trying to keep me safe again. Because you can't gently lay down a job that you don't even realize you're carrying. And now you do. All right, my friend, be oh so well.